So next, we talked about the popular ones that come up: objection leading, objection compound, objection vague, objection asked and answered, objection assumes facts. Those are the ones that I think are good objections. You should make them if you're the opponent in trial and at mock trial, especially if those violations are happening. And you should be prepared as the proponent, the one who's asking questions with their right hand. You should be prepared to get through those hurdles and get over those hurdles and get back seamlessly to your examination. There's a whole host of other objections that come out, especially during mock trial, that are just not strong objections, and I think even a sign of weakness in some ways. We'd like them because we hear them from TV and the movies, or it sounds like what's going on at that point, but I'm going to try to make an argument against them. So I call this badgering the witness and other objections I don't like at mock trial. So let's go through this one is just a misnomer. This is wrong. Objection prejudicial, and you hear different versions of this. Objection prejudicial, objection unfair. I don't really like this. And this comes from an advocate, an opponent who's just panicked because bad stuff for the home team is coming out of this witness's mouth. I don't know what to do, but I need to stop it. So I want to just stand up and say, objection, this is bad for me. Well, it comes out sometimes in these forms: objection prejudicial, objection unfair, objection, this is bad for me. Well, the real problem with this, and I can tell you if you ever say these two words to me while I'm presiding over a mock trial, I'm going to overrule this objection, because prejudicial is not objectionable. There is a rule of evidence that we'll talk about in a different video, Rule 403 of the federal rules and corresponding parts of other state codes, that essentially if something is unfairly prejudicial or suffers from other dangers that are mentioned in 403, that is, it's really bad, the judge can engage in a balancing test and exclude such evidence. But we are assuming that if one side is putting the evidence in, it is good for them. And if it's good for them in an adversarial system, it's bad for the other side. So that is, if I'm putting on evidence as a proponent, I hope that it's prejudicial to you, the opponent. And it can be. It just can't be unfairly prejudicial. So a bad objection, one I don't like, is don't ever stand up at trial and say objection prejudicial or objection unfair, because guess what? If they're doing it and they're allowed to do it, it should be prejudicial to you. It should be a little unfair. It can't be combined together. It can't be unfairly prejudicial under the rules and some of the other dangers that are mentioned in Federal Rule 403. So don't say the word prejudicial all alone. Another form of that is, I asked a question, the witness doesn't answer it. I ask another question, the witness doesn't answer it. And I kind of turn to the court and I say, hey, can you help me do my job? Can you do my job for me a little bit? Can you make this witness answer? Or I keep saying, didn't you stop working there in 1993? Yes or no? And I want to jam yes or no down, and they want to offer me an explanation. I just want to turn to the court and say, help me out on this. Make the witness answer my question. I don't like this because this is a sign of weakness in mock trial as in trial. If you're the proponent, if you were on stage of your examination, you have some tools about controlling a witness or returning to the question, asking it again, or varying your voice or getting to it, or just demonstrating from the jury that this witness is being evasive. But turning to the court too early to say, can you help me out? Can you do my job? Can you make them answer? Is often a bad way to go and makes you look weak as an advocate. All right, here is the badgering a witness one. It's in the same exact vein as please help me. Something bad's going on during trial. Somebody raised their voice. Somebody got really pointed and said something, to the witness, about the witness, really giving your witness a hard time, particularly on cross-examination. And you want to stand up and you want to say, stop this madness, stop it. And you say objection badgering the witness. Well, I can tell you the percentage of successful badgering the witness objections out there, particularly in mock trial, is super low. What you want to do is you want to transition this into, I can't, as a proponent, even if I'm on cross-examination, I can't take the argument that I want to make at the end of trial in my closing argument and jam it through witnesses. Because there's a fingerprint, and because you were there, and because your alibi is, not all that together, you're the one that did it, and you're the one that committed this burglary. Well, that's my argument in closing. If I put it all together in a question, my question is argumentative. So really what we mean a lot of times when we're badgering the witness is we're trying to take our whole theory of the case, or we're trying to take our inferences and conclusions and ball them all up and put them into one question and have the witnesses agree with them. Witnesses aren't going to agree, and when you do it, the objection is objection argumentative. If they're saying something that is appropriate for argument when they pull it all together, but they're balling it up in a question and trying to make your witness eat it, objection argumentative. Short, clear, measured, articulate objection. The judge goes overruled, they get to move on with it. You've stuck up for your witness, you've tried to protect your witness and stop, and you've said this is an appropriate argument, and you patrol it to see if they continue to argue. But stay away from make them answer my question or badgering the witness. All right, this is one of this kind of famously one that I talk about all the time, lax foundation. Lax foundation is actually not an objection. Instead, a lot of the rules of evidence, when we talk about evidentiary objections, have elements. They have parts of the rule that you have to fulfill, and those parts are foundation, or when you ask questions to satisfy those parts, you, as the proponent, you're laying foundation. But a lot of times what happens is if you think something should have come first, if you think that the proponent should have done something first, as the opponent, you stand up and you say, objection lacks foundation. Now, what's missing is foundation in relation to what rule? Foundation, what part of what rule are you talking about? But what happens is this kind of circular motion where opponent says objection lacks foundation, and the proponent says, no, I've laid enough foundation. And then it goes up to the judge and they say, yeah, I think I'd like you to lay more foundation. And no one knows which foundation we're talking about, which rule we're talking about, or which parts of the rule may be missing. So lax foundation is often one where you can expose someone not knowing what they're talking about. Someone says to me, objection lacks foundation. I would simply answer, Your Honor, I'm trying to put in a business record. I've satisfied Article 9 as it relates to authentication, and I've satisfied 8036 as it relates to business records. So I've satisfied all the foundation. I'm not sure what my opponent's talking about when they say I lack it. I think you have a substantive answer like that where you know the rules you're operating under. It's going to quiet a lot of people on the opponent's side. And then lastly, objection beyond the scope is a really tough one. Conceptually, when you have a direct examination, it defines the parameters of what that witness's testimony is going to be about. And if I took on topics A and B, cross-examination should be about A and B as well, and it shouldn't go into other topics. I don't like it because it's got a lot of exceptions to that. For instance, anything that has to do with the credibility of that witness is within bounds, is within the scope. So as soon as you say, well, I asked questions about A and B on direct, so I want to object beyond the scope, and now they're going into a prior conviction of this witness or some type of other act of untruthfulness or something else, I want to say objection outside the scope. I didn't cover that. But really, credibility is always allowed, so the objection fails. And the federal rules allow you to proceed to some of those topics that are beyond the scope, but you have to do so using open-ended, direct examination style questions. So it's not my favorite objection because there's a way around it all the time. We could talk about it more specifically in future videos. Okay, last one. This is if you have one tip that you can take away from this whole thing of what not to do. This is part of my my career goal to rally against what happens in TV and the movies as compared to real life. Every single courtroom drama that you've ever seen that you thought, wow, this is a great question and answer scene. Every Law and Order episode, every cross-examination that's dramatized on TV, you say, wow, the way they ended that, the way they did that, it often involves something that can't happen in real court. You can't ask as the questioner, and this could be on direct examination, but most oftentimes on cross-examination, you can't ask on cross-examination a wildly inappropriate question, something that you are not allowed to do that the other side would object to. So you can't, as the proponent, say, you know, and you were convicted of crimes 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, so you might as well be guilty now. You can't ask something wildly inappropriate, and that question is wildly inappropriate under character rules that you'll learn, and witness rules that you'll learn under Article 4 and under Article 6. You can't do that and then punctuate it with the word withdrawn, and essentially convey the message to the jury. Don't get the answer, skip the answer, and then say, I pull it all back. It happens all the time in TV and the movies, and it cannot happen in court, and it certainly cannot happen in mock trial, right? If the other side stands up to object, You can't just say, I want to get out of here, I want to withdraw. You have to respond to that. And in real life, you're going to end up not only at a sidebar talking to the judge about how you should never do that and don't ever do that again and what's going to be the remedy because you did it. You might end up in chambers with the judge talking about you personally and how you personally might be in trouble. Do not use the tactic that you're going to say something inappropriate and then you're going to say the word withdrawn after to get that inappropriate stuff out. It still counts. It's still in the transcript. It's still in the record. It's still bad. So don't use withdrawn after.